Hello, I'm Theodore Parker, and this is the Side Show. And today is Friday. Some people might say TGIF, July 22nd, 2022. Got those twos running there together. Today in this area, it's going to be 5 degrees warmer than it was yesterday. Presently around 70 degrees, going up to 95. Be aware that the weather's warmer. It has been warm, a little breeze, but warm. Inside feels warm, then it gets cool, depending on how much temperature goes up. Just a couple of items in the news. Friday. This is based on really my personal experience. Remember, I remind you about the mask and everything like that, so you know or probably have heard that President Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. You know, my sympathies for that. Like I gave the experience yesterday about having been quarantined, you know, for those kind of symptoms. But the doctor said the COVID-19 test was negative, and so far that has been true in the case for me. But my sympathies go out, you know, along the medical recovery timeline. Good for the president. Says oxygen levels were good, which brings up another thing. Fitbit has a feature that when you access your heart rate, that it will give you your oxygen levels. Prior to this, probably wasn't important. And as far as seniors are concerned, there are some Fitbits that are offered for $49 before tax, which I think is a good investment. You know, it lasts for a while. I think even at the minimum, it would be good for a year. And depending on what company it is or what products you buy, you know, that can be adjusted. Food. It has been my experience over the past month or so, and especially recently, just trying to buy a loaf of bread is getting difficult. I went to the Walmart a couple of months ago, at least a few weeks ago, I'm pretty sure last month. And the bread shelf was empty. Generally in this area, deliveries come on Tuesdays and Saturdays. And then I went back again and there was no wheat bread, which is what I prefer. And just this week, well, last week actually, I went to the convenience store in this area wanting to get some bread, and the shelves were empty. So I asked the clerk, when did they think they would get some bread? And that was like Thursday. They said, next week. And I'm like, next week? So I went back again this week, and there was no wheat bread. So my neighbor says to me, well, yeah, you know, Ukraine is blocked with the wheat and the grain and stuff from Russia. And I said, oh, so now in the news, there's an item pertaining to just that thing. It says 49 million people could go into famine or famine-like conditions to the grain blockage from Ukraine by Russia. So they were somewhere yesterday trying to sign an agreement to take that grain out of storage and let it go, because Ukraine supplies or exports 80% of the grain that they grow. And it does affect the world, surprisingly enough. About the mask, Omicron. COVID-19 cases are up 25% across the country, driven by the Omicron variant BA4. So, as I suggest, you know, pay attention, you know, stay on top of what's going on in your area, you know, follow the suggestions. Speaking of Center for Disease Control and Infectious Diseases, There was a small news clip, although it was small, it still has some importance, that Dr. Fauci has stated that he has intentions of retiring. And this is having served ever since the Bush administration. So I think his intentions are to do this while President Biden is in office. So, there's not been a specific date announced, but Dr. Fauci is in his 80s, early 80s. I think he had a birthday earlier this year. So 81, 82, I think. So, his appointment was not subject to political considerations. So he's thinking about retiring. Wanted to talk about Facebook for a minute. I know I'm on Facebook and then also on Google, YouTube, but they kind of all tie together. There recently has been an announcement um, by Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. Mark Zuckerberg is the CEO of Facebook, whose parent company now is Meta, that there were going to be some changes in Facebook. And Sheryl Sandberg is the COO, Chief Operating Officer, and has been for 10 years. So there was some rumors I'd seen somewhere on the news feed that Sheryl had intentions on leaving Facebook, but Mark is saying that she's been there for 10 years, so she'll be there for another 10 because she has been, great with the company and so forth and so on. So that brings me into another conversation. So as unlikely as it seems, or maybe not, depending on who you are, they do, if I had an office, let's put it this way, since I'm on Facebook and on Google, and now that I mention it, the platforms that are covered that cover the sideshow with Theodore Parker would be Facebook, Google, on YouTube, Instagram, the messaging services that are available with Facebook Messenger. You did have WhatsApp, which you can access probably directly once you make contact with the page. And then also Hangouts, which Google changed to Google Chat, which is connected to Gmail, which leads us back to Google, which leads us back to YouTube. So I haven't done anything with Instagram because I just recently got a new device and I haven't, accessed the app and caught up and all this other kind of stuff. But those are the various ways that you can access and give comments to the sideshow with Theodore Parker, or Theodore Parker's The Sideshow. So that being said, every once in a while, via text, Mark Zuckerberg will drop in on my Facebook page and have a conversation. And most recently, Sheryl Sandberg did the same. So I was right away, I said, are you the Sheryl Sandberg that is supposed to be, leaving Facebook? So, she sent her ID over. And I went through an incident with this ID thing because at one point, as unlikely as it may seem, I was having conversations with the President Biden, the same way, also a couple of phone calls. But it was like, people come in and they say, well, do this or do that. And I say, well, look, like I'm on the phone with the president. I can't do that right now. And, I was always kind of like, well, how do I know it's really him? Because due to my connection with Mark Zuckerberg, then we were doing some things, and then the president got involved, and he wanted to know how it was going, and so forth and so on. And like me being a veteran, I'm like, well, he is the commander in chief, But then I'm also like, how do I know it's not a scam, So you can't really call the FBI or Homeland Security, but since he provided credentials, they said, oh no, you cannot fake these credentials. So there I am, like, I don't want to say stuck, with the situation being real, but it was real. And it went on for a while and never can tell when he might have something else to say to me. But like I said, being a veteran commander in chief is, well, I'll do what I can, you know. But then I wasn't fast enough. So who comes on the line now? Vice President. She wanted to ask me the same thing. What's going on with this situation that you have not taken care of it yet? And I was like, oh, Kamala Harris on the line. Of course, my experience is that Kamala has her own way of talking about things that she would like to see done. But anyway, I did what I could. And so here we are today. So that being said, I guess if I had an office over there in Mellow Park, how you say it in California, it'd be like, I would stop in, oh, you have your family with you today. How are you doing? One of them type deals. And that's not a put down. It's just kind of like the way things have been going, because it's like in and out, like your boss Peeps did in the office and tells you that such and such got to be taken care of, or what is this, or what is that. And, okay, I'll get on it. Yeah, right, all right. So there's going to be some changes to Facebook. And this is a particular situation because I have, for lack of a better expression, I've actually complained about it. People being on Facebook with multiple profiles. Of course, they're using different names with the same picture, is the way that I expressed it. Now, Facebook is allowing up to 5 profiles legitimately on Facebook. So, but it's based on these considerations. Like you can have a profile for your friends. You can have a profile for your coworkers. You can have a profile for groups that you have joined. And you can have a profile for your interest. And, you can have a profile for yourself, I guess. So that's at least 5. And then with their attention, they meaning Mark Zuckerberg's attention shifting from Facebook, to Meta as the parent company, then that's building a whole nother area for investments. So the investments that's coming from Facebook are going into Meta. That being said, the competition for Facebook is TikTok. And that being said, although I have access to TikTok or receive notifications about things for TikTok, most recently, the public has been reminded that TikTok is a Chinese company and that if you have your personal information, data, and other things on there, then they have access to it for lack of a better expression, in their home office or main company in China. And they are sifting through it for information they can use. So it is cautionary at best as to how you use TikTok. And you have TikTok competitions, you have people that just get on there and talk about their circumstances, their day, their situation, make it a part 1 or part 2. You have the bottle cap competition, where martial artists are kicking the cap off of a bottle with a reverse spinning kick. So it's just TikTok. So Facebook's competition with that is Reels, their own little version of TikTok, Shorts, things of this nature. And they're also going to add 2 versions of Facebook News Reel. So instead of it just being 1, there will be 2. So there are just a few updates. And Facebook probably reaches globally. There may be some areas where it does not reach, but that's probably due to some local considerations. But generally it was established, so that family members could stay in contact with each other and, pass along information and so forth and so on. But now it's just blew up. So you have all kinds of things happening on Facebook. Some of it you might not want, but it's there, and it's up to you to how you handle it to a certain degree. Although Facebook does, it's not like you can just say because something bad happened that they did not correct it. Most people don't want anything bad to happen, but it's what I say filters, but filters might not be the correct word. Safeguards, alarms, red flags, things of this nature. And they do have a reporting system if it gets past them. So, the options are there. So that's the latest stuff that's going on, with Facebook. That might not be every detail, but you might want to check for yourself on the internet and see what you might want to make use of, what adjustments you might want to make, if any, how any of that applies to you and yours, you know. And speaking of the White House and so forth and so on, is, my politics are basically grassroots. So it's not like all of a sudden I'm an honored politician or something. But it did happen, true story. And anybody that knows me would probably say, yeah, that's Parker. So that's how that went. So that's kind of like Friday. I know it's a lot more news out there. It's a lot more stuff going on, but I just wanted to cover those like high points. Um, I had a full day yesterday. I ended up just listening to some comedy routines. And started out, this one comedian was at the Wise Guys Club in Utah. And that kind of took me by surprise because I said, a comedy club in Utah, I guess I should like be cool about too much. But really, a comedy club in Utah. And it was just him. He was just going through his routines and it's like it was nonstop. Then when the credits rolled, I realized it was his show. So I had to take that in stride as well. But there weren't so many commercials in it. Instead of doing commercials, when he went for his break or broke away from the show, then he went to other comedians for them to tell a joke. So truly, it was like nonstop. So yesterday evening, it was just smiles and jokes and laughters and things of that nature, and especially with some of the female comedians. I'm going to share one or two of those with you. No, this was on TikTok. So this was on TikTok, what I'm about to say now. So the woman comes on TikTok and she's saying that one of the pieces of advice that she got from her mother on how to keep a man was to keep a clean house, food on the table, and sex. So she was trying to explain, a young lady, she was trying to explain how she was thinking about this. So she said, well, the house is always in a mess, and I'm usually using DoorDash for the food. But the other one, I just have to do myself. Another comedian, female, talking about recently getting married and advice from her friends. Says some of it's good, some of it's trash. So she said one friend was saying, well, if he gets on your nerves, just cut off the sex. So she says, what did I do? Friday, July 22nd, 2022. That's it. Hashtag.